Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Thursday, May 18th. I'm Khalil Cato with the details. As St. Vincent and the Grenadines gets ready to celebrate the 46th anniversary of Fisherman's Day on Monday, May 29th, the fisherfolk of this country continue to be put on the back burner. This is according to President of the National Fisherfolk Association, Winsbert Harry, who shed light on some of the issues affecting fisherfolk in a telephone interview with SVG-TV News. Harry noted that the fishing communities across the country are getting squeezed out of their operational spaces, and they are constantly seeing a low landing of catch, which is affecting the livelihood of many fisherfolk.
Normally, we used to see a lot of kingfish and dolphin, but we are seeing at least 35% of these fish has disappeared. In the beach seine, our landing has dropped. And what we are seeing as well too, that most of our fishing beaches along our shoreline have been taken away from us because of development that are taking place now. The development that are taking place now with lack of consultation to the fisher folks and to fishing communities, because not only a fisherman who is in a fishing community, there's lots of players that are involved and who operate and sell out of a fishing communities who are being affected as this development goes on without consultation and enough consultation. What I'm seeing since, and what fisher folks are seeing, since 27, we have seen lack of our inshore species from Stubbs Bay come right down to Rockfort, where fisher folks used to go up there and catch the jacks, the robin, the ballyhoo, the gar, even the guys who go on the rocks to make a living used to have great catches. And what we are seeing, they are seeing none now. We are seeing no fish on that side.
Harry also expressed concerns with the offshore dredging that is taking place in the Argyle area, claiming that the process would bring an end to that fishing zone for the next 10 years.
And with this dredging that is taking place, I think that will be the end of that fishing zone for the next 10 years goes down. I don't think you will not be seeing any jackfish, any robin, any ballyhoo, any gar, and these fisher folks on the rock. Pretty soon, one of our leading fishing communities, which is Kalaka, they're going to be developed into a South Coast Marine Park. So fisher folks will be displaced. There's no fish in the Greater Bay area because of the two fuel system there. And when we go down to Rose Place, we have a new project, which is the Port Kingston Port Modernization Project, where it used to be a vibrant fishing community, has been disappeared. In Lomans Bay, the fisher folks are complaining because of what is taking place, that oils are running down in the water. There's a low landing in fish in Lomans Bay. In Rucha Bay, the same complaint with the Highroad Brewery. When you go over to Bokomen, the fisher folks cannot conduct their fishing operation there. And these are productive areas. Bokomen, Rose Place, Calaqua, Stubbs Bay, Brighton Bay, where a lot of the fisher folks used to do their beach seine and their ballyhoo net. And what we are seeing now, we are seeing low catches with beach seine. Our fishing communities are
Expressing great concerns for the fishing industry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the president of the Fisherfolk organization said the government of SVG must remember the importance of the fishing industry to the economy and to the health of Vincentians and others.
Who going to feed our local communities, and how could our local person purchase fish at a cheaper rate when majority of all of our beaches are taken away from us, and where we cannot conduct our fishing operation in the best way that we used to do several years ago. I'm asking on the authorities. There's a social, I'm telling the authorities, there's a social impact that are affecting our fishing communities as I speak. There's no great opportunity and there's no great benefit for our local communities. What fisher folks are getting it's promises, and there's no deliverance, and there's no deliverers that are reaching in these fishing communities. As we develop our fleet expansion program, let us develop our fishing communities. As we say in our slogan, make our future bright and fish right. Please do not take away all our fishing bayside from us. Let us be able to feed our nation. What we are seeing is a lot of people with diabetes, obesities, because they cannot get fish to eat. And when they cannot get fish to eat at a cheaper rate, and they had to go and buy fish at an expensive rate, they wouldn't buy it. So as I said, as we celebrate Fisherman's Day, own our livelihood, own our industry. Let us protect it. I'm asking on every fisher folks in St. Vincent that operate in a fishing community, stand up, speak for your right, protect your fishing communities. Do not let it take all from us. Let us do it with the bright ideas, and let us speak for it, because by 2025, we will not be able to throw beach seine around St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
The National Fisherfolk Organization is partnering with the Fisherman's Day Committee to host this year's Fisherman's Day Festival under the theme, Our Livelihood, Our Industry. Let us protect it through the blue economy. The festival will be held at Kalyaquar this year under the slogan, Make Our Future Bright, Fish Right. Harry is encouraging members of the Vincentian public to support the event.
Persons in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, come and support each primary organization as they have their week of activities, and celebrate with the fisher folks on May 29th, 2023. As the president, I'm pleased to work along with the Fisherman's Day Committee, and pleased to work along with all primary organizations and stakeholders who are partnering to celebrate with us as we celebrate our 46 years of Fisherman's Day activities.
Activities for Fisherman's Day 2023 will be launched tomorrow at the Fisheries Conference Room from 9 a.m. 99 pieces of roads across the country are expected to be done between now and 2025 using funds from the 120 million EC dollars which the government borrowed from the government of the Republic of China and Taiwan. This is according to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on NBC Radio yesterday.
Yeah, other road programs on this is only one set of money, Johnny P.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we're reviewing the problem is whether we have enough contractors, subcontractors here to do the work which is lined up.
Mm-hmm.
you know, Johnny P.
Yes, that's SPM.
you see the bottlenecks of capacity which you may have. I'm talking about capacity in the state, you know, capacity in the private sector. And to help that, people with heavy duty equipment, we give in, years now we give in substantial duty-free concession on the big trucks them. To be used in construction, we give in duty-free, significant duty-free concessions on all the equipment and so on and so forth. And young people are working in all different fields, in their own businesses. The prime is working. You see the number of persons who are advertising, selling things online, catering services. Johnny P, you see that. People who design in clothes, people who have IT startups, people who involve in sports and culture and leisure.
Environmental Health Officer Ralph Williams says that individuals must be cautious when purchasing produce on the streets of capital Kingstown to avoid spoiled or defective goods. Williams and Deputy Manager of the Kingstown Town Board, Marissa Endeavour, were speaking on the issue on the COP Chat program today on WeFM.
When the produce have to be elevated. It have to be elevated. It have to, well, the person in terms of the person purchasing, it have to look fresh. There's no spot defects on the produce, especially those that are placed in plastic bags. You have to ensure that you inspect your bags properly. because persons look to put defective food stuff inside the bags. The next thing again with watermelon. Watermelon is because of the high water content. It can spoil easily. And you have microorganisms, you have the movement of traffic. That's why we have an enclosed place, because you have the traffic, you have persons going on things, blowing the microorganism, will be run a risk of contamination. So watermelon, I will personally ask the persons, be careful when they're buying watermelon, because if the person who is cutting watermelon, if they're not practicing sorting, hygiene, food safety hygiene, they'll use a dirty knife when they cut other produce. They'll use a dirty knife and they'll cut the watermelon and they put it to sale in exposing the sun and so forth. And then it spoil easy. So it's best that you purchase a whole melon. You might not have the money to buy.
Might have to team up with some of your friends.
It's best. But if you know of a vendor who is reputable, somebody who's reputable, I knew that they practice sorting food safety way, how you go and you observe. Sometimes you must observe before you purchase. Observe him, how he cut the melon, what he is doing. If he is handling different things, he's eating, he's chewing, he's smoking. You have to look at those things before you buy. Yeah.
Williams said Kingstown is considered to be a happy hunting ground for rodents, with numerous food establishments, and steps must be taken to reduce the rodent population.
Kingstown is considered to be a hotspot
for
rodents. Hotspot because of the activities. You have a lot of food services, and the thing is that most establishment should have should have a grease trap. So they trap a grease trap. They trap the food part, they trap the grease, the food particles in that grease trap, and the final effluent will go to the, I prefer, that is ideal, go to the central sewer system. So you don't have no drain with food particles. If everybody could get connected to that. You understand? It's a way of, there's no particles in the drain, so the rat don't have food. Rats are wrong because there are 3 basic things they need, and they ain't wasting time. If you don't have those 3 basic things, they ain't coming around you. So 3 basic things: they need some food, they need somewhere to live, and they need a little water. And somewhere to live with is shelter. And if you deny them these 3 basic things, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to stick around. So in Kingstown, you have all 3 in abundance. And then what puts strain? When they clean up, when they take the vendors and them off the road and so forth, the rats was demonstrating. They was annoyed. They was annoyed because the thing is, why you deny them now of certain sources of farming.
The Deputy Town Board Manager also urged the general public to refrain from buying produce from individuals selling on the streets of Kingstown.
Basically, I just want to urge the general public to desist from purchasing produce on the street. One might ask, how would I know who has permission? Each person that is permitted to vend at specific areas on the street of Kingstown should have a permission letter with them. So it's in the best interest for the public to ask for that. But when you continue to purchase from persons on the street, you too are helping. You're not helping the situation, right? Remember, we are in this to help all parties involved, not just the vendors. There are the business houses too. You understand? So go inside the market, buy from persons inside, because buying from persons outside just means that you're entertaining it. And what we at the Kingstown Town Board is trying to do basically is to create order. I know there's a negative stigma connotation attached to Vincentians that we're lawless and we don't like to follow rules. Let us all work together for the greater good. Understand? We're not trying to oppress anybody. We're not trying to victimize anybody, take food out anybody's mouth. We have facilities to accommodate everyone who wants to vent. It's just that we have to do it in a controlled and mannerly fashion for the greater good of the town and by extension the country at large.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines is being represented at the 76th World Health Assembly in Geneva, Switzerland by a delegation led by Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honorable Sinclair Prince. The other members of the delegation, which left the state yesterday, are Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kieser Beach and Head of Health Security Donna Bascom. The international forum runs from May 21st to 30th and will examine post-COVID-19 issues, chronic non-communicable diseases, NCDs, mental health, as well as new and re-emerging issues related to health security. While in Geneva, Minister Prince will also attend the CARICOM and Commonwealth Ministers meeting, which will also be held there. The World Health Assembly is the decision-making body of the World Health Organization, the WHO. Clinical psychologist Dr. J.L. Davis says there was a noted increase in cyberbullying among children during the pandemic, which continues today, and the issue must be taken seriously in order to protect the mental health of our children. Dr. Davis was addressing the issue on the Let's Face It program on NBC Radio on Tuesday.
As we know, during the pandemic, we had lockdowns or children were inside. School became something that happened only online. And so our children was on the internet very often. They were accessing social media more often than they were before the pandemic. And we find that during that time, a lot more cyberbullying took place. And just for clarification, what cyberbullying entails, cyberbullying is the use of technology, and that may be via internet, via social media, or even traditional means such as text message to someone else. So whether it may be insult that person, criticize, humiliate, we find that that is happening a lot among this generation. And the thing about cyberbullying, sometimes it goes, it's overlooked because we don't have, whereas in school we have teachers there to monitor the children's behaviors. You know, very often these days we're just seeing a child with a phone in his or her hand, or a child with a tablet device or a laptop, and we're not sure what is happening. And our children, as we were discussing last week, sometimes they may not always be open and forthcoming with us. And with cyberbullying, it's important to focus on the bullied.
Dr. Davis says it is also important for parents to have open communication with their children and to monitor their social media handles.
The things we advise parents to do is put on security measures, so block their children and teenagers from accessing certain websites, because websites, we actually find that bullying may take place more on those websites as well.
Okay.
It's really important for the parent to monitor what the child is doing, even if it's weekly monitoring, daily monitoring. And again, that's where open communication comes in, right? Talking with your children and understanding, you know, what happened today? You had any interactions with anyone? Again, we don't want to interrogate them. We don't want them to feel like we're trying to monitor their every move, but we want them to know that we're interested, you know. So who you interacted with online today, anything interesting happened? These are some of the ways you can phrase the questions, and you'll be surprised. Once you maintain that level of open communication with your child, they may come out and say something to you.
The clinical psychologist said substance abuse is another pressing area of concern for a large number of teenagers who are experimenting with various substances, including marijuana, pills, and excessive alcohol use.
But what we found is that a lot of children are first exposed to substance use at home. So they may have observed their parents either consuming alcohol excessively, they may have observed their parents smoking cigarettes, smoking marijuana. And it's interesting because there are parents who may try to conceal their substance use from children. So they may try to hide that they smoke marijuana or that they drink alcohol excessively. But one of the things I always tell people is that children are very intelligent, and sometimes we think they're not picking up on what we're doing, but they're observant and they are seeing what we're doing. So sometimes even when parents take those measures to hide their substance use, the children may still observe. And then there are times parents don't take any measures at all to hide it. They're doing it in the presence of their children. They're smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes. So from very young, we see that children are learning that substance use is a way of coping. I've had quite a few clients, you know, when we ask them why they smoke marijuana or how come they started smoking cigarettes, miss, it makes me feel calm.
Okay.
To deal with my problems. They are now resorting to substance use as a way of coping. And unfortunately, this has a significant impact on their mental health.
Dr. Davis said uncontrolled substance use can lead to severe mental health problems in children, such as addiction, stealing, and even a decline in academic performance. The role of the family in improving mental health, meanwhile, during her Wholeness and Wellness program on NBC Radio, counselor and clinical director of the AGM Psychometric and Therapeutic Services, Andrea Games Moyes, said the family has an important role to play in providing mental health by enriching the lives of its members.
When we think of why the role of the family is important, because the family creates a sense of community. It enriches the lives of its members, and in most cases actually, it's the first start or the starting point of interaction. It's the starting point of building connection, and it's where individuals start having a sense of trust, and they start looking at how you care for one another. When there are any disruptions or any dysfunctions in the connection, it shapes person's worldview and their outlook on life. And this is why this is really important, because if we go back to what we call optimal health, or when we look at mental health, it's where a lot of it is interconnected in terms of the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, the way you handle stress, the way you eat, the way you interact with each other, and it helps to create the absence of disease. So it doesn't mean that you wouldn't get sick, but the interaction of the family helps to create an optimal sense or a good health practices throughout a person's development and throughout their lifespan.
Games Morris outlined some of the risk factors that can impact the family's role in mental health development.
So when we think of COVID-19, how that aspect of social distance and the isolation, and we're still experiencing some of it today, especially in St. Vincent and Grenadines, where we experience volcanic eruption, where a lot of people are displaced and moved. Sometimes that sense of loneliness, that sense of disruption can have significant psychological impacts on the family and on people's health, and especially if there's a low social connection in terms of how a family interacts, how they care for one another, how they express emotions, it can cause more stresses because there isn't a sense of calming the nervous system when we look at it as a health factor. In some cases, especially in some cultures where there's a lack of emotional expression, and sometimes that can have significant impacts throughout a person's lifespan, where sometimes a person may not be comfortable with affection or may not be able to show affection, and it can cause certain interpersonal challenges as well.
A webinar was held here today on the topic Unearthing the Contribution of Indigenous and Enslaved African Knowledge Systems to the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Botanical Gardens under Dr. Alexander Anderson, 1785 to 1811. The webinar, which sought to educate the participants about the history of the gardens, was hosted by the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority and was streamed through their Zoom and Facebook platforms. During her presentation, reader in theology from the University of Winchester, Dr. Christina Welch, provided a brief history of the Botanical Gardens, noting that it was taken over in 1785 by Dr. Alexander Anderson.
In 1779, St. Vincent was captured by the French, and until 1783, when the island returned to British rule, it was in French hands. During much of this time, the garden was developed by the French, but once they realised they were losing the island, it became neglected. And when Young returned to the garden in 1784, he found it badly deteriorated, with parts of the garden now cultivated by local people growing cotton and tobacco. Given the scale of the restoration, Young suggested that the superintendentship be handed over to someone else, and he recommended Alexander Anderson. Anderson had worked at the Chelsea Physic Garden in London and had been employed in the military hospital in St. Lucia that was headed up by Young, when Young was exiled from St. Vincent during the time it was in French hands. Indeed, Young had recruited Anderson to locate medicinal plants in St. Lucia. Anderson's appointment had the support of General Melville, as well as Sir Joseph Banks, who was scientific advisor to King George III, and also the support of General Robert Adair, who was the Inspector General of the Regimental Hospitals and member of the War Department. Additionally, members of the East India Company supported Anderson's appointment, and as such we can see that the garden and its development was important to British military, imperial and scientific endeavours.
Dr. Welsh also outlined how the gardens was developed and how it was used for medicinal purposes.
So these charts show Anderson developing the garden and show how its role as a nursery for empire becomes clear. In the 4 pie charts, you can see clearly how the importance of medicinal, edible and useful plants diminishes over time, as well as how the garden develops. When Anderson took over the garden, there were only around 60 plant species and most were useful in some way. But as the garden developed, the percentage of plant species Anderson classed as exotics, curios and ornamentals grows. In March 1791, these plant species make up just under half of the garden. But 18 months later, by December 1792, exotics make up more than half of the garden, and by 1806 these were getting on for 3/4 of the garden. I think some of the reasons for this is during this period of time, St Vincent becomes far more connected, and so things were much easier to import than they were back in 1785, and so he's able then to concentrate on exotics. For the project, though, one area we were really interested in, there was the medicinal plants, and these fall into 2 groups. The straight medicinal plants, which are in the light teal colour, and the medicinal and commercial, which are shown in orange. In 1785, these make up 1/3 of the garden, and the percentage drops, so by 1806, only 1/6 of the garden.